Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out, let people know I've gone live. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And oh my goodness, was it a day of lessons for the inside? For those of you who do follow my content, you may know that my sister went in for a quadruple heart bypass today. I was in the hospital all day long. I am not very good in the hospitals. But with a few lessons, a few tools along my belt, I was going in like a warrior. I was going to spread my sunshine and I was just going to rock the day. And nothing was going to take me down. Nothing was going to take my sister down. It was going to be glorified in its ending, and it was, right? Well, right off the hop, I would like to say thank you, everybody. I have no idea, not being a super religious person myself, that, I was able to rely on the magnificence of those friendships that I've built along the way, those people who do love Jesus, right? And I'm not saying that I don't believe in Jesus, but in my own experiences, in my own life, I have grown and gone down many different side branches in my life. And because of what I do, because I have to be really impartial when it comes to understanding emotions, not to attach religious ideas or spiritual ideas or political ideas or cultural ideas or even family ideas, family traditions that often get tagged on to understandings that, I do have to stand a little bit to the wayside. But in doing that, it's not that I don't have beliefs. I most definitely have beliefs. But like I said, I stay impartial and I try not to let the way I feel, let the way that I understand interfere with important understandings that, are meant for everybody. Understanding it takes all kinds to make the world. And boy, did I get a dose of that today. It's why I'm doing my live show a little bit earlier today. I do find I am extremely exhausted. It was a biggie in my family, but I have lots of movement, lots of ideas, that I attach to that experience. And at the same time, right, there are others attaching their ideas and their emotions and their way of being into that equation too. I was just going to shine. That's all I cared about, was just making sure that my sister came out of that surgery, right? Knowing that if she came out of it, if it worked out well, if it wasn't, right, something devastating, which it really could be. I mean, that's a big one. Heart failure, quadruple heart bypass. That's a big one. And it was an absolutely terrifying experience for my sister. But I wanted to be there in support of that experience to make sure that it was as light for her as I possibly could make it. Right. But I wasn't the only one in that mix and in rubbing shoulders with each other. Right. My emotions really got stirred up today. And I felt really alone in that process, which was really strange because my sister has so many friends, so many people, right? Family, my sisters, we all care for my sisters so much that it would be a big affair, right? And I found myself in the family waiting room by myself all day. And I found that very curious, and there were lessons in that for me. And there was some triggering and some expression of those emotions because it was a very emotional, very stressful day. But like I said, I went in there going to be a warrior. I was going to be the shining light. I wasn't just going to shine on my sister, I was going to shine on the whole hospital and every experience. And I couldn't even leave the room that I was in. I couldn't even concentrate in a book that, a good friend of mine sent out to me. And, I thought, well, it'll be great. I'll have a few hours that I'll just be able to sit here and send out that good mojo and read my book and show everybody how it's done, just in that confidence that everything was going to be okay. I didn't lose that confidence. Like I didn't, that feeling and that understanding. I knew everything was going to be okay. But, right, we are only human, and it was a very human experience for her and for me. And at the end of it, there was an extreme release of emotion because, right, I felt like I was holding the State Building up by myself. And then, when backup showed up, right, that was my moment just to let go. And I'm not going to say I handled it badly. I think I handled it very well. But it was a very surprising experience for me because it wasn't how I expected it to play out in my day. In her day, it played out magnificent. So I'd like to say, because so grateful, I have such a great crew that, right, they prayed to God for me. I prayed in my own way, right? I call it good mojo and, right, blue sparkling light. And I just have my own way of expressing um, that little bit of good cheer for somebody else. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And these people, and they were my friends, and they weren't her friends. They've never even met her before, but they kept messaging me and, wanting to pray for my sister and checking in on how she was doing and checking in how I was doing and actually offering to come down and sit with me through the process. And, I was there for hours and I knew it wasn't going to be too much longer. And like I said, the backup, right, did show up. And I'm calling it backup, but it wasn't supposed to be the backup. I was supposed to be, I was supposed to be the backup. And that's what was so right. But I was meant to play that. I was meant to hold that. And I was meant to experience and be the spectator and the participant in that at the same time. And I took in those lessons. I really went into this whole idea of spending time waiting for my sister, being in that hospital. And oh, I'm not a big fan of hospitals, but I do that, right? Whether I have to go in and have a procedure, which grateful I haven't had to do in probably decades, but also be that support system for my sister, right? Be that support system for my other sisters too, who found that difficult and, they stayed at home waiting for word in what was happening and what was going on. But again, it's just not that immediate family that surrounds my sister in her life. She has others, and in that experience, I might not have been as sympathetic as I could have been, right? Because I didn't have a lot to say. In fact, there was no way for me to really find out how the surgery was progressing or get any information because I was not listed as a point of contact. And yet I was the only one. I was the only one there. And I found that to be extremely frustrating. And at the end, right, where I had that little bit of release in all of those pent up emotions and the whole day of hospitals and reading into, right, other people's experience, being that empath that I am, right, I shouldn't in those days kind of practice that craft. But I kind of wanted to shine in that. Like I said, it was a day of lessons for me, full of lessons. So coming into my live show tonight, I wanted to come in soon as I got home. As soon as I got home, I was done. I was totally wiped and bagged. And well, of course, I'm sitting in and taking in lessons and then trying to lighten that with a mix of some of my characters that I love to learn from, like this gentleman right here, Anton Petrov. I didn't really know anything about him. I knew he was super smart. He loves science specifically, and I don't know where that interest came. I never did well in science in school, but I find the way he explains things, he makes things interesting when it's all scientific and not supposed to be really understood. But I thought he was Russian. He has a very strong accent. So there's lessons in that too, in assumption, right? Just because somebody has an accent. He's actually, I think, a Canadian like me. He went to McGill at university. And I actually thought that it was a passion of his, that it was a hobby. I didn't realize because he looks so young. I didn't think he was actually a teacher and quite renowned and has worked in different schools or universities. And not only that, he's got like degrees and stuff. Like he knows his stuff. And I'm, oh my goodness, Cindy, you picked them well. But it's the way he explains things. Sometimes, the best teachers are the ones that serve their lessons in layman's terms. I try to do that myself. But sometimes, it is in the layman's to make it easy for everybody to understand. Lots of times I really enjoy from learning from really smart people who are entertaining and funny, right? Sometimes, it's in the shyness and the peculiarity, when they're very peculiar, that I find that draws me in too. I have such a mishmash of interesting characters in my life that I love to learn from. And, it's really interesting. And I have to take note of, not just what I'm learning, but who I'm learning from, right? And their own personalities. So when I went to the hospital today, oh my goodness, I found myself analyzing people. I'm categorizing people in different personalities, sometimes even in different personality disorders. and actually finding combinations of different disorders in the same people. And not only that, sitting in a waiting room where other people are waiting for their loved ones to come out of the operating room, and to look at them and see the loving support that they give to each other, see the husbands rubbing their wives' hands and being super affectionate, or getting up and getting coffees, or looking for doctors or surgeons or answers for questions that they may have. And in experiencing somebody else's experience. Like I said, I was a bit of a spectator today, but being the empath that I am, I try to put myself in other people's shoes in that situation. So when I said, when the backup came, I just kind of, my emotions, I just let them just crash on me, because I was emotionally, I was right, and being emotionally done made me physically done. And so I wasn't too sure whether or not I could last another hour tonight, because I usually try to come in just after 11 o'clock to do my live show. It's my last spurt of good energy, and I give it out in the lessons of the course of my day. But I didn't think, right, that I would have too much to offer up if I waited too much longer. I waited a little while today before coming in, because like I said, as soon as I came home tonight, I just wanted to do my live and have a bath and get in my pajamas and call it a night. And then, get up and go visit my sister, who flew through that surgery like a champ. And it ended up not being a quadruple heart bypass. It turned out to be a triple bypass, which is much better. And knowing my sister and knowing my sister's anxiety, right? That that was a really brave thing for her to manage to do. I know she didn't have any choice in that, and we talked a little bit about acceptance and what we don't have control over. And she went through it, and she came out of it, and the hardest part is over. Like I said, she is the best post-op patient ever, and she will be out of there as fast as she's very controlled. My sister, she runs her own life, not just other people's lives, right? But she's harder on herself than she is on anybody else. And I know her well enough to know that, if they say she's going to be in the hospital for a couple of weeks, she'll make that a week, and she will be at home resting. But I want to be back at the hospital tomorrow and make sure that she's okay, because hospitals and doctors and everything, it's still scary, and she's going to be still in pain, and she's not somebody who really deals with pain anymore. So I didn't know what the lesson is in that, but I do come in and share my experiences. And I did want to, right, say super gratefuls to all those people who, and all those souls who, right, put in a good cheer for my sister, somebody that you probably have never met. I've never had this my sister Tracy come into my live show. I have no idea why not, but it's never worked out that way, and I don't question that, because I understand things happen in my life and in my brand for a reason. Like I said, I came in here and I was watching Anton Petrov, and he is a scientist, and he was doing a segment on vitamin C. When he said that, well, my vitamin C is sitting on my desk. I went, oh my goodness, I'm going to feel so much better. Like my whole body is just like blah, right? Like take your vitamin C, Cindy. So I took my vitamin C, and then I took, my magnesium and my multis, and that's going to help me. But I was so exhausted. If he hadn't come on and decided to do, a post on vitamin C, that I would not have even thought to take my vitamins today. I'm just going to send some good cheer out to the fire trucks and the paramedics. I live behind a fire station here in Manitoba, Canada. The paramedics and the fire stations, they learn each other's jobs. And so usually when they get a call, they go off together. And I just want to make sure that they're going by because they're driving a little slow. Okay. Yeah. So sending out some good cheer. Hope they get to their destination. They knock on the door and they said, "Oh, everything's okay," and they can turn around and go back to the station. So what I was going to say here, if he hadn't come in and talked about the vitamins, I wouldn't have taken my vitamins. And not only the right, I work with what comes across my path, and something good for me came across my path. But not only that, I got a little bit. You guys know I love history, so they were talking about scurvy and the gentleman in the 16th or 17th century who discovered the cure for scurvy by doing a trial of people who had scurvy. They didn't have a name for the disease at that time, but he did little trials, and he was giving in pairs different ingredients and stuff, and he found that the oranges and lemons pretty much did a complete turnaround in the participants in the trial within a week. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. And so I go into the comments. I don't often comment myself, but I'll go in and read other people's contributions and stuff. And Captain Cook, even before this scientist, I can't remember his name, right? But Captain Cook, he sailed the seas, right? He did a lot of exploring on the west coast of Canada, and he and the Polynesian islands and stuff. He was a very famous explorer. He was a sea captain, right? But none of his crew ever got scurvy. And the way that he didn't get scurvy, it was from sauerkraut, right? And lots of people don't like sauerkraut. For myself, I love sauerkraut in a Reuben sandwich, but to eat it by itself, probably not. But I cannot eat a Reuben sandwich without the sauerkraut for sure. It's one of the main ingredients. But what Captain Cook did is he made the sauerkraut just for the higher ups, like the the assistants to the captains and the head chefs, and the important people. They made it something special for those higher ups on his crew, and the lower crew members, they took offense to that, and they fought to be able to eat the sauerkraut too, which was kind of a reverse psychology, right? Because sauerkraut, for lots of people, for most people, it's not a fave food in the whole world. But his crew said, we want it too. If they can have it, we want it. And they got to have the sauerkraut too. But he never had an issue with scurvy on his ships. And he came long before this scientist who discovered vitamin C. He invented vitamin C, and he discovered like oranges and citruses would cure scurvy in his crew. I just love things like that. And it just kind of put a nice little brightness, nice little bow, a nice little packaging around, a very stressful and a very emotional day. And it was a day full of perspectives and also in questions, because, for those of you again and hello, Hannah, for those of you again who know, um, um, who've been hanging out with me for a long time, you know that I want to retire in Ontario, right? That I love Mother Nature. I love the mountains. I love the lakes. I love a lot of things about Ontario, and I wanted to make that my retirement, right? Destination, right? In the next few years, if at all possible. And today I got a little bit of taste and thinking, oh my goodness, maybe I can't do that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I am meant to stay here in Manitoba and take care of my sisters and possibly help my sisters make a little bit of movement for themselves too. Maybe I'm not supposed to save the world, right? Maybe I'm just supposed to save that small unit, which would be my own family. And so it gave me some food for thought today. And of course, right, it's a little bit sad. Like I'm happy, right, to do whatever is right supposed to be meant for me. But when I have these questions, right, and when I have these little realizations of, oh my goodness, maybe I'm not going to be able to retire in Ontario. Maybe I'm not supposed to, right? Maybe I'm meant to spend the rest of my life in Manitoba. Not like that would be a bad thing. I would be close to my family, but it's not my dreams. It's right. It hasn't been part of my goal for a very long time. Like the goal was, let's get my sister Tracy through this, right? Get her healthy and back on her feet so that she could make the best life for herself that she possibly can. And then I'm going to go off and live my best life. So it gave me a little bit more on my plate, and that has not even been on my plate in, oh my goodness, because my plan to move to Ontario has been kind of set in place. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but it has been the plan for quite a few years now. And, I don't want to see my dreams dissolve, right? I don't want to see my goals be squashed and, right? But I work with what comes across my path. And, sometimes I look at the people in my life, but I look at the people in my family's life too. And I say, oh my goodness, like, who's going to take care of them? Right? Like, who really cares and who's really got their own agenda in all truth. And I was, right? And that was part of some of my realizations today. And I just kind of like it, my day drained me. But I have to understand that, I am only human and those wrenches get thrown into our life. And, as much as the good, because in the end, all that matters is my sister, right? She flew like that, right through that operation like a superstar. And I got to really see the amazing people that are in my life and get to see the people in my sister's life, right? And who's to say, right? It's not like there's kinks in anything. It was a day of revelation. It was a day of exploring my emotions and really taking a look, right, at how far I have come. Because, I went in there with the intent on shining on my sister and shining in that hospital that, other people also would benefit. And, who's to say, right? That's my intent. But whether or not I succeeded in that, I'll probably never know, right? Lots of times we go through life and we can impact people negatively and we can impact people positively and not ever know. Like nobody ever says anything, nobody ever realizes it, or they do realize it, but they attribute it to something else, right? So it was a busy day. So, what we're going to do, right, is we're just going to tie this live up because I didn't even think that I would be able to stay in this long, but I do want to have a bath, get on a nice pair of pajamas, and crawl into bed early. But what we're going to do is we're just going to shuffle my cards, 54 powerful words. I'm going to pull a card. We'll just go into it for a couple of minutes. First perspective. Thank you so much, Hannah, for popping in to my live tonight. And for those of you who pop in later, I hope your day is going absolutely amazing because I know for most of you, you'll be watching this in the morning. And if I came in a little bit earlier tonight, you happen to catch me now, thank you so much for coming in and spending my last bit of energy with me because I do want it spent, and that's a truth, right? I was going to talk about love and limerence today, but I think tomorrow will probably be a better day for that. When because like I said, today was a big day in my family, but it turned out so well. I'm so pleased with how it turned out. And my sister rocked it like a superstar that she is, right? All my sisters are superstars. All of them are. Okay, you guys, here we go. The word we have tonight. We just get one card out of there. Here we go. Oh my goodness. Integrity. Integrity is the examples, right, that others will follow, right? And that's something I've always tried to come onto my platform with, that genuineness in myself, that maybe somebody would see the truth, right? That somebody would see the value that I carry for myself and in the intent that I bring in to my brand that I serve, right? And it's not that, I want people to follow me, but I do want people to trust me, right? I do want people to believe in, the few magnificent life lessons I pick up through amazing people like this Anton Petrov, right? Who who divvies up his own content in a way that makes me appreciate him, makes me understand him, right? If he was all talking in scientific words and stuff that I didn't understand, possibly I would not be a follower. I would not be a follower of his because I really wouldn't understand it. I wouldn't be able to feel him out and say, oh my goodness, right? This guy is genuine. This guy, right, speaks in a layman's terms that, right, even I can understand, right? And maybe find those similarities in what I do or in what I would like or intend to do in showing up here every single night except Saturdays. I sure enjoyed my day off offline yesterday. I did a little bit of piddling around, and right. I don't think I left the house yesterday, but it was a really nice day nonetheless. Integrity is the example that others will follow, right? Because you trust they're showing themselves well in a way that you can trust what they're trying to put out to the world, or what their conversations entail, that you can trust that they're not going to sway you in a direction, right? That they're not trying to manipulate you or make you feel bad about yourself or introduce the jealousy to make you sway in a certain direction. That in their genuineness, right, that you want to be pulled in or pulled closer to them, because you can feel, right, that truthfulness, if not in the facts, then in their intent, right? Yeah, integrity. Integrity is the examples that others would follow, right? That's good influence. That's good influence. That's something that I've been learning over the course of the years, right? Okay, you guys, that's it for me tonight. I am going to have my bath, and I am going to crash hard tonight, knowing tomorrow is a brand new, fresh day. And yeah, I'm going to go visit the best post op patient ever. Yeah, she'll be out of there within a week. You watch. You guys have a great night, and we'll see